Okay, welcome to the Octopus Movement podcast, where we celebrate the unique minds and extraordinary potential of nonlinear thinkers. I'm Dr. Janice Campbell, your host for today's episode, and we'll be exploring how the power of nonlinear thinking can transform the world. Now I would like to introduce you to my very dear friend and our guest for today, Michelle Cheyne. She has a background in psychology and psychometrics and education, and collects interesting people to learn and grow with. She's the founder of the Wisdom Seeker Society, the founder of Instinctive Living, which helping individuals and small businesses grow. She's a founding member, a UK ambassador, and an octopus teacher at the Octopus Movement. And she's the next step in how I got to the Octopus Movement. The last time I hosted, I talked to our mutual friend, Chris Michelle, and he led me to Michelle Cheyne. And so here we are. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Hi, Janice. Thank you so much for that intro. It's always a good day when I get to chat to you.
Just so listeners know, we usually begin the day with a little WhatsApp. Hi, how are you? So this is yes. Welcome to our private chat.
Not enough in person though. I think, but there's always a connection. Yeah. Definitely.
Eventually, we will get to see each other with legs. That would really
that'd be nice. A hug.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. So, being my introduction to Perry, which was the introduction to the whole ocean of nonlinearity, I'm curious how nonlinearity shows up in your life. How does that thinking inform who you are in the world?
See, I knew you were going to ask this, and I've been thinking about this, but I don't think there's a beginning to this answer. I think it's just always been there. And I suppose Perry made it, put the words there. Hi, Matt. Matt's been saying that he might not make it, but he's here. And yeah, it's always been there. It's always been part of everything, but there wasn't a term to it. So there was Multipotentialite. When I met Perry, he was the Multipotentialite dude. And that was one aspect of it. But non-linearity itself, I suppose I've always been the weird one that, did things differently. And that all relates back to non-linearity.
Is that what led you to study psychology? Was to figure out why you were the weird one or why everybody else wasn't as weird as you were?
Well, psychologists cost a lot of money, so I reckoned if I can learn about it, I wouldn't need one. But obviously, that didn't all work out so well. But it was the curiosity in what makes us different, I suppose. And then, obviously, in school, I went to school in South Africa. The end of school, I did quite well, funny enough, at school. So at the end of it all, it was like, okay, so where are you going to go now? So I went to the as you do, to the, what do they call them? Career assessment guy or the whatever, the psychometrics and that. And he's like, but you can do whatever you want, really. What are you interested in? So I was like, well, I'm interested in people. I'm interested in travel. I want to experience new things and all these things. And psychology. I'm really interested in psychology because I had gone through some stuff in my young life, which I thought, it's worth looking into further. And he said, no, just whatever you do, don't do psychology because there's never going to be any money or a career in it. So go study law. So yeah, okay. So I went to study law because apparently I would then travel and work in a diplomat. It was a very pretty picture that was painted, which didn't really, wasn't the real world necessarily.
Can you explain for people who don't know what psychometrics are? Can you explain that?
Yes. So psychometric testing or assessments are psychological tests. So a lot of it that I did was cognitive assessments. I've done a couple of hundreds of those. I worked with the Department of Public Services and Administration, did assessments within that. So competency-based assessments, which would include personality and cognitive as well, all those kind of verbal, non-verbal, those kind of assessments, and then integrating results, creating reports, doing feedbacks. All of that's part of the world of psychometrics.
Okay. So is there a personal experience or a professional experience that you can share that illustrates how a nonlinear approach can shift things, can make for a big breakthrough or a significant impact?
I said you can't ask me difficult questions. This is a big one. Yes, all non-linear approaches are always the ones that shift things. I don't think we can shift our approaches in life through linear thinking. But then also I need to say that, these are only two boxes that we've also created. So in an effect, non-linear thinking is linear because, what is non-linear thinking? But thinking outside the box as a non-linear, I think, is the only way that I can imagine we can move forward as a society, as a world, Example, I'm not sure. Connection, I think the Octopus Movement in itself is testament to it. How we have created, or how Perry have, orchestrated this movement in helping us connect so deeply with people that we've never in person seen or met. It's literally like family within the founding members, although I haven't met all the new founding members because there's quite a few. But you don't see some of the founding members for months, and yet you feel so ultimately connected to them. It's that is nonlinear thinking. There is no structure or linearity to that.
Right. No, I agree. I know that you and I agree that the whole concept of linearity, nonlinearity is a spectrum. It's not,
Yeah.
Everybody pulls from different pieces of the spectrum at different times, Even the most nonlinear person will occasionally develop a habit of like putting on their left sock first instead of their right,
Exactly.
Kind of
Yeah.
And vice versa, obviously.
Yeah.
But I do think that willingness to meet people where the thing that I appreciate in the Octopus Movement that I've said before is how kind everybody is. But I think it's also, as you alluded to, that willingness to meet people exactly where they are in that minute.
Exactly.
And exactly as you are in that minute.
Yeah.
And know that it's okay. That it's, friends we haven't met yet, or friends we have met and we haven't talked to in a bit,
Yeah.
Or in our case that we talk to every day. But yeah.
Yeah. And that's beauty of the octopus, is that curious nature. And why I think, it is such a great emblem for what we are creating as a mycelium together. These images of, and there's no judgment in curiosity, because it's really just to figure it out and to experience it with each other, not putting you in a box or me in a box.
Yeah. So how do you see that, speaking of the mycelium, how do you see that, how would you explain to someone who maybe, doesn't swim in these waters with us right now, but is always welcome to join? Ways to begin to nurture and strengthen those kinds of connections, because I think we're so focused on what we can get from each other, or what we can, how it will further our career, or how we'll get a piece of information from somebody. How would you explain that there's more to it than that? There's more mycelium tendrils than just those.
I don't think you can explain it. I think it's an experience. I've tried once or twice to explain it, and anybody that knows me, words sometimes elude me completely. So for me, it's just that feeling of connection. There's a viscerality, if that's a word, about connecting with someone, even if it's on a screen, because there's so much more. You can feel it in your body, as you so beautifully say. There's so much more. It's not a a cognitive thing. It's not a head thing. It's a heart thing. The octopus has 3 hearts, so I mean, and 9 brains. But let's not go there.
Yes, exactly.
The hearts are bigger.
Right, right. And one of our things that we talk about in the movement is about solving the unsolvable. And oftentimes people think about, war and conflict, and lately more and more people are concerned about the environment and education, and pick something that's in the news or not in the news that people are have rising concerns about. How do you see the mycelium being able to break those things up and begin to solve them? I know you've done some work with the rhinos, trying to save the rhinos.
Yes.
So that...
Yeah, I mean, okay, let me just think about this. This is a big question. So we are nature, right? We are part of this world, inside, outside, and being who we are as octopi. I don't think there's anything else for us to do than to be part of a solution and to move forward. I don't know if we'll find those solutions, but we'll try our best, and look at it from all angles and have different insights into these things, not just from a system relevant kind of perspective, but it's back to the heart again. It's back to understanding and connecting with those majestic animals like the rhinos, who are just, we're all walking each other home, whether we're animals or people. It is being part of that and understanding that there's so much more. I mean, education is one big thing for me, obviously. Environment, war, all these things are so big, and the think tanks are amazing. I've done the think tanks, I think, from just about the beginning, where it was absolute chaos for a bit, and then it all pulled back in, and it's still. I think some people that come in the beginning go, "What's going on here?" But there's a beautiful, orchestrated, dancing star kind of chaos, as Nietzsche would say, about it, and kind of looking at how we're not removed from the problems or the things that we want to try and solve.
Michael just put in my comments about how it's about experiencing the human potential.
Yes, and that's it.
And how in that I think about it being in terms of a resiliency and a exploration of who we are as individuals, but who we are as this network, and not the network like whether or not you've joined the Octopus Movement or not, but all of us on the planet. What if you were in charge of the world? How? No, well, but I mean, if you had a magic wand and you could affect education in a way that allowed that to happen, if everybody listened to you, and you could just magically make it move the way you needed it to move, or you wanted it to move, or thought it should move, what would that look like?
There would be a myth and astrology included in the curriculum as number one. History and geography might be kind of moved around. I think, we've been so disconnected within the system, within the educational system. The non-linear thinkers, if we have to, brand children that are not, neurotypical necessarily, need to find the magic that works for them. And there's a lot of magic in myth that connects us to ourselves through archetypes and through, story and play. And astrology does the same. We can see each other, ourselves as part of a bigger picture, instead of becoming these small, isolated entities that have no connection and feel lonely and disassociated. And I think that's what the education system has been doing for many, many years. The brilliant minds of our centuries couldn't even, move through the educational system, and still it's doing the same as it did back then. So let's not go down that rabbit hole, but that is a big thing. And I think myth and astrology are things that could help us connect to ourselves and to the universe as such.
Well, yes, because story is how humans carry, whether it's a scientific research paper of this is the story of how we experimented this, or a myth, or a family story, or the thing you always tell people when they ask you what you do, or whatever the story is. It's how we translate things, and whether the story is spoken or written or illustrated
or danced or sung
or sung or silently held in a relationship, where you can just be quiet with somebody and there's a story there that about that. And I think we're on the same page about that. No big surprise. And so what would be your tips or suggestions for people to reconnect with their own nonlinearity? Because in my view, and you and I've discussed this, I mean, there's no such thing as a linear 2-year-old, know. And so, how do we get back that nonlinear wonder and curiosity?
I can't see it from a linear perspective, so it's difficult for me to say because, of who I have become. And I can't say, as you say, it's a spectrum. I have been very linear in certain aspects of my life, but I think the main thing of it is to try something new. Try putting your sock on the right foot, or brushing your teeth with your left hand or your right hand, or whatever it is, or however small it is, and listening to your instinct, to your gut, to go, oh, I want to do that. Let me just go and do that. It's coming back again to connection instead of being controlled by what my head's telling me. I have to do it this way. To let go is sometimes very freeing.
Yeah. Well, and it's also about not just going on autopilot while your brain is 16 miles away doing something else. It's about being present and about the brushing your teeth with a different hand or putting your sock on a different foot. It's very much what one of my mentors calls perturbing the usual.
Breaking the habits. And I mean, there's a very good book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, Breaking the Habit of Being Myself. Or, I think there's statistics around after 35, most of our actions are on autopilot. So how do we break that? How do we become present in our bodies and our relationships? Do we see our children when we speak to them, or are we just telling them to go brush their teeth and get to bed, or whatever it is,
Right. Well, and it's if you think about it, if you watch a small child, the world is endlessly fascinating and new, even if it's the same thing. Brushing your teeth one morning is different than brushing your teeth the next morning. Can I hum and brush my teeth at the same time? What's the and the world is still that fascinating thing. We just forget to look or feel,
because we've been told that we can't, because you're not supposed to brush your teeth standing on one leg when you're 47. But maybe you should. What does it feel like?
And it's that, and it's also that our attention has been, you need to tag your attention to the rest of your day. You need to tag your attention to what's coming. You need to think about these important things that are, are structural in nature, which means that you put the rest of it on autopilot. You put the being alive in this body in this moment on autopilot.
Yeah, which creates a lot of anxiety, because I can't always control what's coming up in the day, or I can't always know whether
None of us can. It's an illusion, this idea of control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yet we don't want to let go of it because, we're so... it's this semblance of control, which I think is driving us crazy as a collective. There's just underlying anxiety constantly because we're not playing, we're not seeing it as an exploration, as what might happen. What's the best thing that could happen next?
Right. Exactly. We're always preparing for the most, well, not always, but people have a habit, of preparing for the most traumatic outcome.
Because it's better prepared than not.
Well, and there's some validity to that. And once you've stockpiled whatever it is you need, emotions, things, whatever, then it is possible to choose a freedom to think about, well, what if the fabulous thing happens, or maybe what if I don't think about what's going to happen at all and just wait and see.
And that's where, for me, where the magic lies. Like, what if we don't put an outcome to it? Because then anything can happen. And I think we kind of go, okay, these are the best outcomes and these are the worst ones. And so we limit ourselves to a range where there's actually an unlimited range, I think, I hope.
Which is a lovely lead in to tell us about the wisdom seekers.
Well, the wisdom seekers is exactly that, to kind of look into the rabbit holes in a good way. I know a lot of people say rabbit holes are bad and it kind of keeps us underground, but it's not. It's experimenting and being curious together, creating a tribe. I'm not so keen on the community because, it's always got that white picket fence with someone handing out pills at the entrance to, I don't know what it is, but that tribe where we have our medicine woman and we have our self-love guru, and everybody's got their space within the tribe, but it's also undefined, and it is about growing together, being curious together. Within a structure, there is actually kind of a structure. We play around with dialogue, which you bring so much magic to with your distance mind-body integration and helping us be present and, changing that narrative of, I'm going to explain to you and tell you exactly how I feel and you must now, agree with me. Instead, we're looking at how do we experience each other's points of view, in dialogue and in... It's more than listening. I think it is experiencing each other. And then we have,
So how does your experience, I know you're the founder, but how's your experience of the Wisdom Keepers space, the themes that are explored every month, the conversations, the books that are shared, how does that inform or ripple into your daily life, going to watch your son play sports or whatever the thing is?
It's big. It is like we're doing a book every month, which we brought in last year, somewhere around August. Another one of our members, Scott Chappell, also part of the Octopus Movement, did a trip with his daughter, and they went to see this college, which you also know very well, and I always get the name wrong. It's St. Joseph's?
No, St. John's.
St. John's, yes, in Maryland. And they have this beautiful curriculum of 200 books, I think, is their graduate. Anyway, I was inspired by this, so I introduced a book each month, which I try and keep short. That has really changed a lot for me within that space as well, because there's this perspective, monthly perspective, like this book this month, and it's everything kind of seems to now come into play within the topic of we're busy reading or I'm listening to the finite and infinite games, and it's just amazing. Last month it was the 5 levels of agreement, and it was 5 levels of attachment, and it was 4 agreements, and so that aspect of of the monthly content has been amazing. We have a wisdom keeper that comes in and does wisdom whispers, which we learn something new every month as well. We've done time sweeps with Richard Morden and Wendy Rattel. We've done astrology with Sue Brain. We've done Akashic Records with Suzanne Gamache. So there's all these new aspects that come in either through the books or through the wisdom keepers. Our wisdom circle is just an open space where we can just share whatever's going on, whether it's good or bad or just is. And in the dialogue space where we have had interesting experiments. I think no one knew what I was doing when I started it. It was very interesting, but it's become people are coming back. They're not running away anymore. And it's, I think, built out how we look, or I look at dialogue and at what people do, as to how can we learn from everybody around us as much as possible.
And does that play out in your family, in your 3D world?
Yes, if they listen to me, because I think they all think I'm nuts most of the time. But we do have more interesting conversations because of it, mostly.
Well, that's what children are supposed to do. They're supposed to think that you're nuts for a while. I think we all did. Thought our parents didn't know anything until we got to be 25 or 30, and suddenly they were very wise all of a sudden.
Mom's just weird. So mom listens to her music way too loud in the car, and it's embarrassing. And but in a good way, because they know that they're now also aspiring to be weird. So it's good.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing, a glimpse into your wisdom and experience and your passion for all of this. How can our listeners get in touch with you?
Well, Perry put so nicely my website on the bottom, Instinctive Living. Instinctive Living is kind of the umbrella where Wisdom Seeker Society is the members and the content and the things that we do together. And there's all the links will be on there. You can find me on Facebook, which I don't use that much. There's a Facebook group though. There's LinkedIn, there is Instagram, there is, what else is there? YouTube.
She's everywhere. You can find her everywhere.
You can find me everywhere.
So, any parting suggestions for our listeners?
Join the Wisdom Seeker Society. We'd love to have you, and join the Octopus Movement. I have really enjoyed watching and being part of the Octopus Movement so much. It's been amazing to know that we are not alone, and yet we are all, as Michael would say, one of one, and we are very uniquely different. But it's been a great journey, and I'm honored to be a founding member and the ambassador in the UK.
Very nice. Very good. Thanks for joining us, everybody. If you have any questions about how to join the Octopus Movement, feel free to reach out to me here on LinkedIn or on Facebook, or you can also go to the octopusmovement.org, which is right there, info at theoctopusmovement.org. Perry is on the banners today. And I'm sure Michelle can answer your questions too, if you want to reach out to her. Remember that we all began life out of the box. So embrace your inner octopus. Join the movement. Do something weird. Put your socks on backwards. Or maybe not backwards, but put your socks, start with a different foot.
Or different socks is also good.
Different socks. And let's bloom a sustainable, connected future together. Until next time.